your cholesterol test might be telling you a completely different story than you think. You could have normal cholesterol and still be walking around with dangerous plaque building in your arteries, days or weeks away from a heart attack. And on the flip side, you could have high cholesterol and be perfectly safe, if you understand what those numbers really mean. This is where most people get blindsided. They don't know which cholesterol numbers actually matter. They think it's just total cholesterol, when in reality the type, size, and pattern of cholesterol particles can make the difference between a clean bill of health and an emergency room visit. And here's the kicker, lowering cholesterol isn't always about taking medication for the rest of your life. There are proven, science-backed ways to bring cholesterol down or make it less dangerous through diet, lifestyle, and a few targeted strategies. Not folk remedies. Not internet myths. Actual changes that work. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how to read your cholesterol test like a cardiologist, how to spot the hidden red flags most people and some doctors overlook, and the natural. Practical steps you can take starting this week to protect your heart for the long haul. By the end of this, you'll know more about your cholesterol than 90% of the population, and you'll know exactly what to do about it. Hi, I'm Dr. Max. I'm a men's health specialist and practicing urologist, but I've spent over a decade working with patients to reduce their risk of heart disease, stroke, and other lifestyle-driven conditions. I've seen guys go from dangerously high cholesterol to completely safe levels without a single prescription. And I've also seen men with good cholesterol end up in the ER. This isn't a video about bashing statins. They can be life-saving for the right person. But for many men, the decision to start them is made without looking at the full picture. Today, I want to give you that full picture so you can have an informed conversation with your doctor about what's right for you. When most people get their cholesterol test back, they scan for one number, total cholesterol. If it's over 200, they panic. My arteries must be clogging. If it's under 200, they relax. I'm in the clear. But here's the problem. That number alone tells you almost nothing about your real heart risk. Think of it like seeing a bank statement with just the total amount of money in all your accounts combined, without knowing if most of it is debt, savings, or an emergency fund. Without that detail, you can't make smart decisions. What really matters is the breakdown of that total cholesterol. LDL cholesterol, this is the so-called bad cholesterol, the one most doctors zero in on. But here's the nuance. LDL comes in different particle sizes. Large, fluffy LDL particles are much less dangerous than small, dense LDL particles, which are more likely to wedge into artery walls and start plaque buildup. HDL cholesterol, often called the good cholesterol. Its job is to act like a cleanup crew, ferrying excess cholesterol out of your arteries and back to the liver for disposal. Higher HDL is generally protective, but it's not just about the number, it's about whether it's functioning well. Triglycerides, these are a type of fat in your blood that often spike because of poor diet, too much sugar, and insulin resistance. High triglycerides can drive dangerous changes in your LDL particles, making them smaller and more harmful. Non-HDL cholesterol. This is your total cholesterol minus your HDL. In other words, all the cholesterol that isn't doing the cleanup job. Many cardiologists consider this a better predictor of heart risk than LDL alone. Ratios, for example, your triglyceride to HDL ratio can be a powerful clue about your metabolic health. A high ratio often signals insulin resistance, the same process behind type 2 diabetes, belly fat, and higher heart attack risk. So here's the takeaway. If you only focus on total cholesterol, it's like judging an entire movie based on the first 30 seconds of the trailer. You miss the plot, the characters, and the real story, and in this case, the story could be the difference between a clean bill of health and a future heart attack. Here's how to break down a typical lipid panel, the test your doctor gives you when they're checking your cholesterol. LDL, low-density lipoprotein. This is the so-called bad cholesterol, but the label is oversimplified. Ideally, you want LDL under 100 milligrams per deciliter for most people. But here's the thing, it's not just how much LDL you have, it's what kind. Small, dense LDL particles are like tiny ball bearings that can slip into the walls of your arteries and trigger plaque buildup. Large, fluffy LDL particles? they're much less dangerous. To figure this out, you need an advanced lipid test like an NMR profile or an ApoB test. ApoB is a direct measure of the number of LDL particles, and more particles usually means more risk. HDL, high-density lipoprotein. Think of HDL as your body's cleanup crew. It picks up cholesterol from your arteries and hauls it back to your liver for recycling or disposal. For men, you want HDL above 40 milligrams per deciliter, and ideally higher. The higher your HDL, the better your chances of keeping arteries clear. But remember, it's not just the number, it's whether your HDL is doing its job effectively. Triglycerides. These are fats circulating in your blood. You want them under 150 milligrams per deciliter, but under 100 is even better. High triglycerides often have less to do with fat in your diet and more to do with excess sugar, refined carbs, and alcohol. Chronically high triglycerides can make your LDL particles smaller and more dangerous. Total cholesterol. This is simply a rough sum of LDL, HDL, and other cholesterol types. By itself, it's not very useful for predicting heart risk, yet it's still the number most people fixate on. Without knowing the breakdown, it's like judging your fitness by your body weight alone, no clue about muscle versus fat. Triglyceride to HDL ratio. This is a powerful little metric that can hint at your metabolic health. You get it by dividing your triglycerides by your HDL. Under 2 is excellent. Over 4? That's a red flag for insulin resistance and a higher risk of heart disease. Your body actually needs cholesterol. It's not some toxic sludge your system is trying to get rid of. Cholesterol is a raw material your body uses to make hormones like testosterone and estrogen, to produce vitamin D, and to build and repair every single cell membrane in your body. Without it, you literally couldn't survive. Now here's where it gets tricky. Some people naturally have higher LDL cholesterol because of their genetics, but they also have low inflammation and no plaque in their arteries. In other words, their LDL number looks scary on paper, but their arteries are clean, flexible, and healthy. These people can live their whole lives with high LDL and never have a heart problem. On the flip side, there are people with so-called normal cholesterol numbers who still have a heart attack because their real problem isn't cholesterol, it's inflammation. Chronic inflammation can make the lining of your arteries fragile and more likely to rupture, even if your cholesterol is fine. That's why looking at cholesterol alone is like judging a book by its cover. You need the context. 2 tests I think are absolute game changers for that context are: 1. High sensitivity. This is a simple blood test that measures inflammation in your body. High inflammation can turn cholesterol from harmless cargo into dangerous plaque. If your hsCRP is elevated, that's a sign your arteries may be under attack, even if your cholesterol numbers look perfect. 2. Coronary artery calcium score. This is a special kind of CT scan that literally looks inside your coronary arteries for calcium deposits, a sign of hardened plaque. Your calcium score tells you how much actual, physical plaque is in your arteries. A score of 0? That's as close to a clean bill of heart health as you can get. When you combine cholesterol numbers with inflammation markers and a calcium score, you stop guessing and start knowing. You can see if high LDL is actually causing damage or if it's just a number on a page. Statins are one of the most prescribed drugs in the world. They work, no question about it. They lower LDL cholesterol, and in people who already have heart disease or are at very high risk, they can significantly reduce the chances of a heart attack or stroke. That's why cardiologists use them so often, because for the right patient, they're a proven tool. But here's the problem. A lot of men get put on statins almost by reflex. Their cholesterol is a bit high, and before anyone talks about their diet, their exercise, their sleep, their weight, or their blood sugar, they walk out with a prescription. Sometimes without even looking at other risk markers, like inflammation levels or a calcium score, that could tell us whether that high LDL is actually dangerous. And statins aren't free of side effects. Some guys feel absolutely fine on them, but others notice muscle aches, fatigue, or even small increases in blood sugar over time. That doesn't mean they're bad drugs, they're not. For some men, they're life-saving. But they're not always the first answer, and they're not the only answer. The truth is, for a lot of men with borderline or moderately high cholesterol, you can make big improvements with the right lifestyle changes and sometimes avoid medication entirely. That's where I want to go next. The real, science-backed ways to improve your cholesterol profile without relying on statins from day one. Now, let's talk about the part you can control, the natural, proven ways to improve your cholesterol profile without jumping straight to medication. First, cut the added sugars and refined carbs. This is the fastest way to drop triglycerides and boost your good HDL cholesterol. We're talking about sodas, pastries, white bread, candy, anything that spikes your blood sugar and floods your bloodstream with extra triglycerides. Replace them with real, whole foods and watch the numbers move in the right direction. Second, eat more fiber. But not just any fiber. You want soluble fiber, the kind found in oats, beans, apples, and flaxseed. It works like a sponge in your gut, trapping cholesterol and carrying it out of your body before it ever reaches your arteries. Third, add healthy fats. Olive oil, avocado, fatty fish like salmon or sardines, these aren't just tasty. They can raise your HDL and shift your LDL into the larger, fluffier particles that are less dangerous. Fourth, move your body. Both cardio and resistance training make a difference. Cardio helps burn triglycerides for fuel, while strength training improves your metabolism and insulin sensitivity, which indirectly helps your cholesterol balance. Fifth, lose visceral fat. That's the deep belly fat around your organs, and it's a major driver of inflammation and bad cholesterol patterns. You can't spot reduce fat, but losing overall weight, even just 5 to 10 pounds, can shrink visceral fat and improve your blood work. Sixth, quit smoking. This one's huge. The moment you stop, your HDL starts to rise and your arteries start repairing themselves. Seventh, consider smart supplements. Niacin, omega, 3 fish oil, and plant sterols can have modest but meaningful effects. But supplements aren't magic pills, and they're not for everyone, so always run it by your doctor before starting anything new. The beauty of these steps is that they don't just improve cholesterol. They improve everything: your blood pressure, your energy, your waistline, even your mood. The good news? Cholesterol numbers can improve a lot faster than most people think. With just 4 to 6 weeks of consistent diet and exercise changes, you can start seeing real movement, especially in your triglycerides and HDL. That's because these numbers respond quickly to what you eat and how much you move. LDL can be a bit slower to change. For some people, it takes 3 to 6 months, and genetics play a big role here. But even if your LDL doesn't drop dramatically, improving its quality, shifting from small, dense particles to larger, less harmful ones, can still reduce your risk. And here's the part one loves sharing with patients: inflammation markers, like high sensitivity CRP, can start dropping within weeks once you cut processed foods, sugary drinks, and refined carbs. That means your arteries can start becoming healthier long before your next cholesterol test. So yes, you can make a difference faster than you think. If you've done all the right things, cleaned up your diet, cut the sugar, moved more, lost the belly fat, and after 6 months your LDL or ApoB are still high, especially if you've got other risk factors like high blood pressure, diabetes, or a family history, that's the point where medication, like statins or newer options, might actually make sense. But here's the difference: you'll be making that decision from a place of knowledge, not fear. You'll know exactly what your numbers mean, what's been tried, and why medication is the next step. And that's a much stronger position to be in than just being told, your cholesterol's high, take this pill. Your cholesterol test isn't a death sentence, it's a snapshot. Learn how to read it, and you'll know whether to take action, change your habits, or simply keep doing what's working. And if you've ever turned your cholesterol around without meds, share your story in the comments. It might inspire someone else to take control.